We all have problems in our lives and seek for solutions. Similarly, science generates solutions for everyday life and helps to answer the great mysteries of the universe. A mystery that makes us think why the apple that fell on Newton's head did not float in the air. Yes, these queries will be answered in this video as we learn about the famous scientist Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton was born on the Christmas day, that is 25th December 1642. Newton attended school from the age of 5. He enjoyed drawing and was interested in making mechanical devices. As a child, he showed his interest in making clocks and building working models of windmills. He loved reading books about how to make medicines. He graduated by specializing in mathematics and philosophy in 1665. Newton built the first practical reflecting telescope and developed a sophisticated theory of color based on the observation that a prism separates white light into the colors of the visible spectrum. His work on light was collected in his highly influential book Optics, published in 1704. He also formulated an empirical law of cooling, made the first theoretical calculation of the speed of sound, and introduced the notion of a Newtonian fluid. It is said that when Newton was sitting under a tree, an apple fell on him. The fall of the apple made Newton start thinking. This made Newton think about it all the time, throughout the day and night. For several years, he was unable to sleep peacefully, as this thought kept bothering him. We always observe that an object dropped from a height falls towards the earth. Isaac Newton could grasp that the same force is responsible for all the things to fall down eventually. This force is called the gravitational force.
Wow, wasn't it interesting to learn about gravity?
Yes, surely.
Yes, but what is it about three laws of motion? It goes above my head.
Now, let's know a bit more about the first law of motion. An object remains in a state of rest or of uniform motion in a straight line unless compelled to change that state by an applied force. Certain experiences that we come across while traveling in a motor car can be explained on the basis of the first law of motion. We tend to remain at rest with respect to the seat until the driver applies a braking force to stop the motor car. With the application of brakes, the vehicle slows down, but our body tends to continue in the same state of motion because of its inertia. Here's another example of Newton's first law of motion. You have also experienced this law if you have ever used a swing on the playground. In order to swing, you have to use a lot of force, but once you get going, it can be hard to stop. The swing, which is at rest, will remain at rest unless acted on by an unbalanced force. An object in motion will continue with constant speed and direction unless acted on by an unbalanced force. The second law of motion states that the rate of change of momentum of an object is proportional to the applied unbalanced force in the direction of force. The second law of motion is often seen in action in our everyday life. Have you noticed that while catching a fast-moving cricket ball, a fielder in the ground gradually pulls his hand backwards with the moving ball? the filter increases the time during which the high velocity of the moving ball decreases to zero. Thus, the acceleration of the ball is decreased and therefore the impact of catching the fast moving ball is also reduced. If the ball is stopped suddenly, then its high velocity decreases to zero in a very short interval of time. Thus, the rate of change of momentum of the ball will be large. Therefore, a large force would have to be applied for holding the catch that may hurt the palm of the fielder. The third law of motion states that when one object exerts a force on another object, the second object instantaneously exerts a force back on the first. Once the balloon was released, it moved on its own. When the balloon is relieved, pushing the air inside it with a force, the air exerts the force inside the balloon, making it move forward. Although these three laws were written more than 300 years ago, they are still important now to understand how things move and represent the foundation of classical mechanics. Here is another example of the third law of motion, where the scientist used a rocket to launch the space shuttle into the orbit. When the rocket fired, the exhaust from the rocket moved downwards while the rocket moved forward. Without this law of motion, the space shuttle would have never lifted up and we would have never landed on the moon. Newton formulated the laws of motion and universal gravitation that formed the dominant specific viewpoint for centuries. I hope you enjoyed learning about Newton's three laws of motion. Thank you and have a great day.